Today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about taxis here in Egypt. The street taxis are the ones just roaming around looking for a ride. They will overcharge you. And that goes for Egyptians and foreigners alike. You should be using a taxi app. Now, one issue is these apps don't exist all over Egypt. What do you need to know when taking a street taxi? There are no meters, none whatsoever. So yeah, you need to negotiate on a price before you get into a taxi here. So what about taxi apps and scams with them? Are you gonna encounter that? So I met a guy who was telling me every Uber was doing this to him. He was saying you need to pay $20. They wouldn't cancel. He had to pay the cancellation fee like again and again. He did this for 2 hours. Lastly, let's talk about taxi etiquette here in Egypt. The do's and don'ts of taking a taxi. Good morning from Cairo. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about taxis here in Egypt. So that is street taxis, taxi apps, where they operate and where they don't, pricing, scams, and more. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gisselle. I've been living in Cairo for nearly 5 years now, so I have quite a bit of experience with the taxi scene here. And that is what I'm going to be explaining to you guys today. Everything that I've learned in the past nearly 5 years of living here. Yalla bina. So first, there is a difference between street taxis and taxi apps, obviously. The street taxis are the ones just roaming around looking for a ride. They tend to be clustered around ancient sites or airport exits, and they love to rip people off. They vary in appearance. In Cairo, they tend to be white. In Alexandria, they are usually black and yellow, but it can change, you know, and it could just be some random guy in a car. The important thing to know is that they are not on any app, and like I said, they will overcharge you. And that goes for Egyptians and foreigners alike, which is why all the Egyptians that I know, they never take street taxis if they can avoid it. You should be using a taxi app, which is why I'm going to be talking about that first. I'll get back to the street taxis later, but let's list off some of the options for taxi apps here in Egypt.
In Egypt, you have a variety of different taxi apps. Uber, InDrive, Careem, Didi, and some other lesser known ones like Pink Taxi. But I'm not going to talk about the lesser known taxi apps because they are not widely used or available. And in fact, out of the 4 main taxi apps I've just mentioned, Uber and InDrive are generally the most available and what I would recommend using.
These apps show the price that you should be paying, both the estimated price before the ride and then the final price at the end of the ride. And you can usually pay with a card through the app or cash to the driver. Now, this system, in theory, prevents any scams from happening or that the driver might try to pull on you. But unfortunately, they do still happen, and I will elaborate more on that in a minute. If you're wondering how much a ride costs here in Egypt, they're generally pretty affordable. I mean, like a ride from downtown Cairo to the pyramids of Giza, for example, that's about a 20 to 25 kilometer ride, can cost around $7 US. Now, obviously that depends on the time of day and traffic, but yeah, that I hope helps a little bit. But you can actually look this up yourself if you want. On the Uber app, you can see how much the price of an Uber would cost here, even if you're outside of the country. So let me show you how to do that really quickly.
All you need to do is open the app. I'm using Uber and I'm actually on my laptop just to give you a clearer image, but it works the same way as on your phone. So what you need to do is first input the pickup location. Let's say I am leaving from Tahrir Square, and drop-off location will be the Giza Pyramids or Giza Necropolis. I'm gonna search for rides, and we can see you have a variety of different options, different vehicles, and prices. So Comfort, Uber XL, which has a larger trunk apparently, Uber X Saver, a scooter, which is usually what I take, Uber X. Yeah, you have a lot of different options. Now, obviously I'm in Egypt, so maybe you think that's why this is working for me, but you can look this up anywhere in the world. Let's say that I'm in France, and let's say I'm at the Louvre in France. Okay, and I want to go to the Tour Eiffel or the Eiffel Tower. Search for that. I'm not a robot. And we can see the different prices now in euros for Uber in France, Uber XL, Uber X, a van, electric, or shared, apparently. Oh, a lot of different options here. Pet. Moto. They have that in Paris? Anyways, so yes, this is just to give you guys an idea of what you can look up on Uber. You don't need to be in Egypt to look up the estimated price for a ride. Now, of course, the prices fluctuate according to traffic, but now you know.
Now, one issue is these apps don't exist all over Egypt. So let's take a look at some of the major cities that most travelers visit while they're here in Egypt and see what apps actually operate in each city.
In major cities like Cairo and Alexandria, all 4 of these taxi apps, Uber, InDrive, Carim, and Didi, are readily available, and you can usually get a ride very quickly. Best option for both Cairo and Alexandria, Uber or InDrive. Over on the Sinai Peninsula, we have the Red Sea resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh. Here, Uber is more limited but still works. InDrive works very well, while Carim and Didi are rare. Best option, InDrive. Next, we have Hurghada, another popular resort town along the Red Sea. Here, Ubers are widely available, InDrive works very well, Carim is limited, while Didi is rare to find. Best option, InDrive, not Uber. That reason is directly related to scams, which I will be getting into in a moment. Luxor is the next city we'll be taking a look at, and inland in the south is where the taxi apps begin becoming more difficult to find. Uber essentially does not exist here, and if there are options for Didi or Carim, it is extremely rare to find. InDrive does work, however the ease of finding a ride is not going to be as fast as the other cities I've mentioned, but it still works relatively well and is definitely your best option for taxi apps in Luxor. The next and last city we'll be taking a look at is Aswan. Located deep in the south of the country, this is the city with the least amount of available rides from any app. Uber essentially does not exist here, and same as in Luxor, if there are options for Didi or Carim, it is extremely rare to find. InDrive does work here, though offers for rides are limited and not always guaranteed. Your best, and really only option for taxi apps in Aswan, InDrive. To summarize, the best option in each city would be for Cairo and Giza, Uber or InDrive. For Alexandria, Uber or InDrive. For Sharm el-Sheikh, InDrive. For Hurghada, InDrive. For Luxor, InDrive. And for Aswan, InDrive. Generally, InDrive works better than a lot of these other apps do.
Now, before we move on to street taxis, taxi scams, general etiquette, I do want to mention for those new to the channel that if you're planning a trip here and are looking for an excellent tour guide or a driver to help you guys get around the country, my husband and I do help organize trips for people looking for those kinds of services. So obviously I've been living here for nearly 5 years. My husband is Egyptian. We want people to have an amazing time here. I love this country so much. You need to love it too. So yeah, we offer those services if you are looking for it. And I always leave the number, our WhatsApp number in the description of the videos. So if you want to reach out and contact us, you can find it there or in the comments as well of this video. Now, let's move on and discuss some of the issues surrounding taxis. Now we know that using a taxi app is definitely the best choice here, but it's not always an option. So in places like the Siwa Oasis, for example, there are no taxi apps at all out there. So you are going to need to take a street taxi if you don't have your own private driver. or even here in the cities in Giza, if you're going to see the pyramids of Saqqara and Darshur, that's a bit out of the city, out in the desert, and there's not a lot of taxis out there. So you might have ahlan, sabah khair. So you might have problems catching a taxi out of there, you know. So honestly, for places like that, for trips like this, I do recommend getting a private driver so that you don't have to worry about that. But there are times, there are places where you will just need to have to take a street taxi. Maybe there's a lot of traffic and no Uber is answering, whatever. So for those instances, what do you need to know when taking a street taxi? There are no meters, none whatsoever. Or if for some crazy reason you find one, I still wouldn't trust it. So yeah, you need to negotiate on a price before you get into a taxi here. Before you step foot into that taxi, negotiate a price. He's gonna try to get you to get in, and you know, don't worry about it, come on, come on. Don't do it. Because once you step foot into that taxi, you start moving, then you're arguing about a price in a moving taxi, the ride has already begun. So yeah, negotiate on a price before you get in. And do expect to pay more for the street taxis than you would for a taxi app. That is just how it works. The street taxis get to charge more if you're really desperate enough to take one. They know it. And so yeah, the apps are always going to be cheaper, but at least if you look at an app, you can have an estimated idea of how much you could pay, and then try to get it the taxi driver to go as low to close to the number the app is showing, so that you don't overpay by a ton. Now here's a scam that can happen with these street taxis. At the end of the ride, you're about to pay the price that you agreed upon before you began the ride, and then they suddenly tell you, no, when I told you that price, it was in US dollars or euros or whatever, some kind of foreign currency. Obviously, sabah khair, oh, shukran. Obviously though, that is BS. You don't pay him anything more than what the app is showing. So yeah, if that happens to you, just get out of the laugh like he's joking, pay him his Egyptian pounds, get out of the taxi and walk away. He will either let it go, which I'm sure he would because he knows he's in the wrong here, or he might start making a big deal out of it, in which case, be my guest. Draw attention to yourself on the streets. Egyptians are curious people. There's usually a lot of people out on the streets, so they will start gathering around to see what's going on, and everyone's gonna discover that he's a scammer, because obviously no one is paying in US dollars or euros or whatever, you know? Anyways, another thing that you could do is call the tourist police. Their number is 126. I've never done that. I feel like that's quite excessive to do, and not worth my time. It's a pain in the ass, but I mean, there it is, just in case you want it. But yeah, so these like, there's some little scams that can happen. They might not. I just want to bring it to your awareness so that if it does happen, then you know how to handle it. So what about taxi apps and scams with them? Are you going to encounter that? Unfortunately, yes, there are scams with the taxi apps as well. Now, Uber really tends to see the most scammy drivers. But of course you can experience it with any app. Now, I've actually made an entire video talking about scams, guys. So if you're curious about scams in Egypt as a whole and not specifically about taxis, I'll leave that link up here. But basically, it's the same thing with taxis as it is with most scams in Egypt. They're just trying to overcharge you. And there are some problem areas, I would say, that really see higher levels of this. And that is in the entire city of Hurghada over along the Red Sea. There's a lot of complaints coming out of Hurghada about this kind of stuff. And then the other place where I hear about this a lot is here in Cairo, but specifically around ancient sites, and even more specifically around the ancient sites of, well, I guess the Grand Egyptian Museum isn't an ancient site, but a tourist site. The Grand Egyptian Museum sees a lot of this, and the pyramids of Giza as well. So those are two areas where if you're ordering an Uber out of there, you might experience it several times. So how do these scams look like? What is it that you're going to experience if it happens to you? Well, you'll obviously order an Uber, let's say, and the Uber driver accepts, says he's on his way, and then suddenly he messages you and says, the app is not showing the correct price, you need to pay more. It's not updated, whatever kind of reason he'll give, he's going to say you need to pay more. And he's gonna probably say you need to pay in a foreign currency. Usually it's like 20 US dollars, to be honest, but maybe it's 30, maybe he says euros, who knows. But this is the issue, you've already accepted, the ride is now ongoing, and this is what is really actually annoying. If you cancel the ride, then you have to pay the cancellation fee. Or you can tell him to cancel the ride. But I've met and I've heard and seen of quite a few drivers who refuse to cancel. So they make you just sit there on the side of the road when you're trying to go somewhere and you're engaged with them in the app, so you can't order a new ride. And like they're probably just like sitting there smoking a cigarette and having tea, waiting for you to cancel so that you pay the fee. I mean, I don't know. It's really annoying. It's really unfortunate. And this can go on. This is the real issue, because the cancellation fee is not a lot of money, but if it happens multiple times, that begins to add up. And again, it's about being annoying, you know? So I met a guy who is telling me, and this is quite recently, he was down by the pyramids. I actually, by the way, feel like this issue has become bigger and bigger and more of a problem over the years, because I knew it was an issue, but I didn't hear about it that often a couple of years ago. And now I hear about it a lot. Anyways, so this guy that I was speaking to said he went down to the pyramids of Giza and then he was leaving and he was trying to get an Uber, and every Uber was doing this to him. He was saying you need to pay $20. They wouldn't cancel. He had to pay the cancellation fee like again and again. He did this for 2 hours down by the pyramids of Giza. That man has patience, because I mean, I think most people probably would have been like, fine, and paid the $20 or something. So, yeah, and I think the last Uber even actually accepted the ride and didn't try to get more money from him via Messenger. But then when he showed up in like mid-ride, he tried to get more money. And that can happen too, you know? So whether it's the beginning of the ride or the end of the ride or the middle of the ride, just say no. I mean, honestly, if this happened to me in the mid-ride, I would say, like, no, I'm not paying that. And then if there started to be a problem, if he started getting aggressive or something to the point where I was like, okay, this isn't good, then I would just say, okay, fine, I'll pay you that. But then I wouldn't pay him that. We'd get to our destination and I would get out of the car and give him his Egyptian pounds and walk the hell away. Because he's a scammer, screw that guy, you know? So basically, no matter what happens, don't pay a scammer. Don't take a ride with a scammer. Agree on a price before. If someone's messaging you before the ride and before they've even gotten there that you need to pay more money, don't get a ride with that person, because he's gonna try to scam you mid-ride. He's just a scammer anyways, don't give him your service, you know what I mean? You know, I actually thought about going down to the pyramids of Giza and like ordering a bunch of Ubers just to show you this in real time. But then I figured, why would I do that to myself? Like, it's not necessary for the video. I am making it quite clear that this happens. And in fact, I have a few clips of this happening to me down at the pyramids. Now, this was a few years ago, because honestly, I usually drive my motorcycle or take a motorcycle taxi. But with the car, I did. The first clip I'm gonna show you is with the Uber, and my complaints or experience about that. And then the second clip will be my complaints about a street taxi. This is all in one day that this happened. So yeah, let's roll those clips. The first Uber was telling me, I want $20 and I'll give you a tour and this and that. And I said, no, man, stop. I just want to get to the restaurant and no tour, no $20. And then he was like, I forgot what he said, because I've spoken to a few Ubers at this point. By now, as I'm speaking, this was the first Uber that I ordered. And he canceled, or maybe I told him to cancel. Then I ordered another Uber and he accepted. I think he tried to message me and my phone is not translating the Arabic as well.
Eventually he arrived though, and he was trying to say to me that it's very expensive to come through here, so I'm gonna have to pay him more than what Uber was saying. And I said, no, I'm just going to the restaurant. I live here and I know that none of that is true. And I said, how much? And he goes, oh, don't worry about it again. I said, no, how much? How much? 500. He wanted to charge me 500 Egyptian pounds to take me to the restaurant. I said, get out of here, bro. And he tried to say, oh, no. And I said, no, I live here and I know, you know, and then he said 200. And I said, 200? No way, bro. He said 100. And I said, I'm not doing anything more than 50 because an Uber charges me 38 pounds. That's how much it was charging me.
Now, another very similar scam that happens, in fact, I would almost say it's the same, it's about overcharging, is with an Uber driver telling you that you need to pay more money, but it's still in Egyptian pounds, because of a hidden fee. One common one is like when you're going to the airport, they will tell you, I have to pay money to get into the airport area, which is true. There's a ticket system, you have to pay money to enter the area. But you should not be covering that. Uber includes that as part of the ride. So this extra money that they have to pay is included in the price that is shown to you when you order the Uber. So yeah, that's BS. Don't pay it. I mean, the bottom line here is never pay more than what an app is showing you, and pay in the currency the app is showing you, which is obviously Egyptian pounds because you're in Egypt. Yeah, and like no one's gonna kill you. Don't be, you don't need to be afraid of any driver. Worst comes to worst, you get out and you're cranky and you have a bad day and you'll get a new taxi and it'll be fine. But yeah, it is annoying. It can happen, so just be prepared for that. What can you do to avoid these things happening, these scams? Unfortunately, there honestly isn't that much that you can do other than handle it correctly once it has begun. But preventative measures, I don't feel like there is a whole lot. Unfortunately, there's not a great way. You can report these drivers, of course. Take a screenshot, say you'll message them, message them and tell them I'm going to report you to the tourist police. I'm going to report you to the Uber app. You can take a screenshot and stuff, but in the end, I don't think they do much. And if you haven't actually taken the ride with them, they will not discipline this driver. So anyhow, what preventative measures can you take for these situations? There's only one that I can really think of, and I have never actually personally done this, but it has crossed my mind and I've heard of people doing it. But I don't really have a huge issue with scams because I take motorbike taxis. And by the way, motorbike taxis almost never have this issue. In fact, I've never had a motorbike taxi try to ask me for more money or dollars or anything like that. So it's really the cars that this happens with. But you can change your name to an Egyptian name spelled in Arabic. So on the app. So let's say you're on Uber. Let's say your name is Kim on Uber. Change your name from Kim to Sada. But look up how to spell that in Arabic. I mean, you can just Google this or ask ChatGPT, the internet, what is an Egyptian name? Spell that in Arabic for me, and then copy paste it into the app. I know that's kind of extreme, but if you really are the kind of person that frets about these types of things, maybe that's a better course of action for you. Then the driver will show up and be very confused. And maybe he'll try to scam you, but probably not. The chances of him trying to rip you off have already decreased because he's not doing it beforehand. And then he's caught off guard when he arrives. So anyways, it is what it is. They exist. I hope you handle them well. Some things to know. The numbers look different here, and that is very helpful to know when catching a taxi so that you can read the license plate and confirm they are actually the ride that you ordered and not someone just pretending to be your ride.
In Egypt, the numbers don't look like this. They look like this. When using an app like Uber, for example, it will show you the regular numbers for the license plate in the app, but when the driver actually arrives and you look at his license plate, it will be in these numbers. Thankfully, unlike the letters in Arabic where you read from right to left, the numbers are read from left to right, so you can at least read that in the normal direction you're probably used to. In the Uber app, The license plate numbers are shown here. So for example, let's say your taxi driver's license plate number is 8126. It will look like that in the app, but on the plate, it's going to look like this. Why is this important to know? Because Egypt is an incredibly densely populated country. In fact, around 95 to 97% of the population lives within the Nile Valley and Nile Delta, despite those areas making up just 4% of the country's land. That means the streets are packed with people and traffic, with cars constantly parked, pulling over, idling, or squeezing through every available space. Your taxi driver doesn't know what you look like, you don't know what he looks like, and it's entirely possible that he's parked right next to you while you're standing there looking for him. But if you can read the license plate, you'll be able to find your driver much faster. I've made an entire video teaching you how to read the numbers quickly and easily, so if you'd like to learn, you can watch it up here. Knowing the numbers is useful for another reason too. It's not uncommon for regular street taxis to pull up and claim they're your Uber when they aren't. If you can read the license plate, you'll know immediately whether it's the right car. Another option is to ask the driver to show you the trip on their phone so you can confirm you're their passenger, but personally, I think it's much better to learn the numbers. It's faster, easier, and it means you won't have to rely upon the driver to spot you first in a crowded street.
Another thing to know, cash is king in Egypt. So if you're using an app, you can usually pay with a card, but cash is always preferred, and you might even get denied a ride if you are paying with a Visa, or they might just not accept the ride. So cash is king for a lot of different things. Why do they prefer cash? Is because if they're getting paid through Uber, they have a payout schedule. It takes time to get paid, and a lot of these drivers are living paycheck to paycheck, and getting that money instantly really is important for them to get more gas and things like that. So yeah, all the drivers will prefer cash, of course. And a few other things to know about the taxis here. A lot of drivers don't speak a lot of English, or maybe even very little. So don't expect like a high level of fluency. A lot of people don't wear seatbelts. Almost no one wears seatbelts. The driving here is crazy. I'm sure you know this by now, but if you haven't, I have a ton of videos of me riding around not only Cairo and Gizeh, but the entire country on my motorcycle, and you can see how the traffic is here. So yeah, your driver might be on the phone, sipping tea, smoking a cigarette, driving like a maniac. That is normal here. The Adi, like, just expect it. Welcome to Egypt. Lastly, let's talk about taxi etiquette here in Egypt. The do's and don'ts of taking a taxi. Now, first, if you are planning to take a motorbike taxi, let's say Uber, for example, try to give yourself some distance between you and the driver. Especially if you're a woman. But yeah, like no matter if you're a man or a woman, like clinging to the driver, hugging the driver, they don't really love that, you know? So try to give yourself some distance. If you're a guy, it's like, it's okay, it's passable. But if you're a woman, that can go either one of two ways. Either they're going to be extremely uncomfortable, maybe they're really religious, or they're married and they have children, or people are looking at him like he's a bad man because you're clinging to him as he's driving you to your location. Whatever it is, you're making him uncomfortable. This is a very conservative culture, you know, things are different here. Close contact with the opposite gender is haram, you know, it's no bueno. So you really shouldn't be doing that. Avoid it if you can. I actually had this only happen once to me, but I was denied the ride, and I'm certain it's because I'm a woman. Because the Uber driver pulled up a taxi, motorbike taxi, and he was kind of looking around. It was kind of an emptier street. He was looking around like, where's my ride? And I knew he was my ride. I can read the license plate. And I went up to him and I was like, I'm your ride. And he was like, deer in the headlights, shocked, like, no, 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 no. He looked pretty religious though, like he had a long beard and some traditional clothing on, and I'm sure that was the reason that he said no. He was polite about it, but he refused the ride. He drove away. Now that only, like I said, happened once in the nearly 5 years I've been living here, and I've taken more taxi motorbikes than I can count, but it is a thing. So yeah, try to give yourself some distance. The other way it can go is that they're gonna love it, and then they're gonna flirt with you, and they're taking it the wrong way, they're misreading the situation. Yeah. Oh, shukran. But either way, it's not an ideal situation. You're just taking a taxi to get somewhere. You're not trying to find a boyfriend, I don't think. And yeah, it's just weird. So try to give yourself some distance. Now, if you are taking a bike, how do you hang on? Someone actually asked me this once. You hang on to the bottom of the bike. So like, صباح الخير. ممكن أصور المكنة بسرعة? So if you're riding the bike, I would try to sit back here and kind of hang on here. Shukran. Ma salama. It's like random, dude. But anyways, yeah, I'm not buying my motorcycle, so I can't show you. But you hang on to the bottom of the bike for dear life, you know. Don't sit so far back that you're gonna like fall off. Obviously be safe, but try to give some distance. And it does depend on the bike, because not all bikes are the same quality, good morning, or same type. So be careful that wherever you're grabbing, you're not gonna like pinch your fingers. I've had that happen. I was grabbing on and there was moving parts somewhere. It was like the bike was falling apart, and it pinched like very briefly, and I was like, oh my God. And I found a new place to hang on. But yeah, you know, it's not always possible. Maybe the driver is very large and like you are just gonna be pressed up against them. Or it's a sports bike and you're tilted like that, like basically very short seats. But try if you can. Now, if you're taking a car, I would generally recommend women to sit in the back of the taxi. Now, this is just, again, it goes to the culture. It's better for more distance to be between a man and a woman. But also, in general, wouldn't you sit in the back of a taxi if you're anywhere in the world? You don't usually sit in the front. So I have sat in the front. Sometimes I will, especially if I'm trying to film something, but general rule, especially because I've heard women complain online about this, where they were in the front of the taxi and the taxi driver was flirting with them and tried to touch them, grabbed their leg, whatever, something like that. I've never had that happen, but in case it does, in case there's some weirdo driver out there, if you're in the back, that's definitely decreasing the chances of that happening. So, and then this goes for both men and women. When the azan happens here, or the call to prayer, maybe you're listening to music, the driver offered you to connect to his Bluetooth, or you're playing music on your phone. Stop that music until the call to prayer finishes. Pause it, because that is disrespectful here. Again, it's just a cultural thing. When the call to prayer happens, the music stops until the call to prayer ends. And this is, I've been to like live shows, big performances with stage and professional artists and stuff, and they will stop the show until the call to prayer finishes. So this is normal, just out of respect. Pause the music until the call to prayer concludes. Whew, that was a lot. Now, from everything I've just told you, you're probably thinking taking a taxi is extremely complicated and way too much trouble in Egypt, but it's really not. Lots of people do it all year. You know, I do it a lot, and plenty of other visitors do, and foreigners that live here, and Egyptians as well, obviously. So yeah, it's not as big of an issue as it might sound. I'm literally just giving you every possible scenario I can think of that might go wrong. so that you can be prepared in case it happens to you. But it doesn't mean that this is happening all the time. It's just something to be aware of. So yeah, don't get discouraged or defeated. This video is just informational to help people, travelers, when they're here. But I honestly rarely encounter these issues. I've had it, like I said, a few times by the pyramids, but that's pretty much it for me. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a big like, subscribe, of course. And if you have any experiences here with taxis, positive or not, leave a comment, even if it's just a very simple, took to Uber everywhere, had no problems, you know, let us know. I'm sure people in the comment section would be interested, other people watching this video planning trips to Egypt. And if you've been to Aswan or Luxor, have you used these apps that I've mentioned? Because I've been to these cities, but I've honestly mostly rode my motorcycle. In fact, that's what I did. I rode my motorcycle. So I had to glean this information by speaking to many other people. It took quite a while to gather this information and make this video. But yeah, leave comments, guys. Subscribe if you haven't already, if you like this kind of videos and information and content, because I have a lot more. And okay, that's it. I'm gonna sign off. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Ma salama.